Well, obviously, but I need that power grid right there. Just let me do this.
No, you're not concerned.
Oh shit, my wife. I'm fucking married. Why am I married? Why do I have 3 children?
Oh shit.
Just go. Leave me. I will. I love you, but I don't want to do it. Can you guys hear that fan?
No.
Okay, great. That's good. Because without it, I think I'd die. This is about $5,500, $6,000 rig right here. How about we? What I can do is I can adjust this a couple different times throughout the show. Strong. I'm in some of the best shape of my life, guys. I won't even lie.
Dude, you look great.
I don't have a 6-pack. We can do this. Let's have fun with it. I mean, this is.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.
No, I've been in the content game for 20 years. I get it. I've done all of what y'all are doing, but I've done 1,000 times.
I'm gonna bring it back just really quick for a second here. You had mentioned just a second ago that you've been doing this for about 20 years. I wanted to ask you, how has your time blogging on the internet evolved and changed over those 20 years? For really quick, for the Zoomers checking this out, we're talking pre-Instagram, we're talking pre-iPhone, we're talking pre-Facebook, pre-YouTube. 20 years is a long time, especially on the internet.
Yeah, that's a great question. And what's so nice is you could go back and read some of that ridiculous content that I wrote on my blog, john.do. My archives will go back all the way to 2002. Wow. Okay, so just think about that. That's 20 years ago. That's when I was a college freshman, sophomore, and I was talking about hitting up the clubs, checking out chicks, getting drunk. I was doing some really stupid shit. And guess what? I blogged it all.
That's awesome.
I had no idea. In fact, you can go back and when it doesn't even bother me, of course, anymore. But you can literally read me writing about my employer in really stupid fucking ways. I would be like, oh my God, my boss is such a fucking idiot. I cannot believe he just asked me to do this. I had no idea or concept that my boss could literally go online and read that and then fire me. But to answer your question, how has my content changed? It really hasn't. It's generally the same thing. It's a candid look at what I'm thinking about, how I'm feeling about things, and I'm trying to share a little bit of what I know to my friends and my family and anyone else who'd rather listen. Sometimes those things get a lot of attention and sometimes no one gives a shit. But the most important thing that I determined very early on in my content career was that you have to be clear about why you do what you do. What's so nice though is on the internet and the metaverse, if you continue to do your art, there is a buyer for your art. And it is very possible to make not just a little bit of coin, but actually quite a bit of money just consistently sharing your art. So I've made a little bit of a career out of it now, and I can't believe it. I feel so fortunate.
Would you describe that as meta creating for people who haven't heard the term before? Is that definition?
Yeah, a meta creator is kind of the next evolution of just a creator. So very much like a creator today, it's anyone who's building anything on the internet and trying to build wealth or create profit from it, which most folks are doing. And what I believe is that a meta creator and the meta creator lifestyle is one where you simply get to do more of your art with more people that love what your art is. And I think that's so cool. It's like, that's what life's about. And I've built some technology to help some folks do that. So I'm just trying to do what everyone else is trying to do. Live a very fun life, fun, full life without sacrificing family.
A quick little frame of reference here. I'm 25. So
25.
You had a pretty big year at 25. We're going to get into that in a second. But I'm bringing this up because I wanted to mention, just for a bit of frame of reference, I wasn't really on the internet 20 years ago. But I have some early memories of being on the internet, and I find myself almost becoming nostalgic for it. Maybe a loose term, or for lack of a better term, but the idea of wild, wild west when talking about early internet is something that comes up for me. Would you say that you prefer where the internet is at now in comparison to 20 years ago? And do you ever feel like it's peaked somewhere along the way? Or are we still going up? Are we still ascending?
Oh, Zach, you have such great questions. I did not think that you were 25. I think you're a little bit of an old soul trapped in a young body. No, I don't. The internet today is infinitely better than the internet of yesteryear, of the early aughts, the early kind of 2000s to whatever. But I fell in love with the internet, and what I believed was almost a near perfect manifestation of the internet in the mid 90s. Mid 90s, between 94 and 96 is really the heyday of BBS, bulletin board systems, early forms of chat, and actually earlier forms of consumer grade email. And what's so crazy was back in the mid 90s, it was completely permissionless. So if you went to CompUSA or I don't even know if Best Buy was back then, but Babbage's or whatever, your local hardware store, you got a modem, you could plug that thing into your telephone jack and you would be online. And you could go into these rooms and I was 13. No one knew that I was a punk ass kid and they just respected me as an internet citizen. And that's when I fell in love with the internet. It wasn't about who I was. It was about what I could do and how I could help other people. So what in the early mid 90s, what I discovered was I could be a 13-year-old kid helping 40, 50, 60-year-olds with their software. And no one cared that I was 13. And I was on these forums. They're the Flash Macromedia forums back in the mid 90s before they got bought out by Adobe. But the moment I revealed and became moved from pseudonymous to real, and people figured out that I was 13, they no longer replied to my forum posts. And that was tragedy. I thought, wow, it was my first real taste of ageism. And I was like, wow, that is not the internet that I thought was the right one. And what I've done and what I think the last 20, 30 years has been, it's been a fight to get back to that original version of the internet where you could be 13 or 70 and no one cared. As long as you could provide value to other folks, they didn't care about who you were or how old you were. And so there is a real sense of nostalgia, Zach. I think there's something you picked on very acutely. There is a real sense of we're missing something. I feel like I'm always having to go back to a gatekeeper or two, right? And that's not how it originally was. There's an unfetteredness that's missing. There's a freedom that's missing. And that's what Yen is all about in a lot of ways, because when you hit Yen, and I don't want to make this an advertisement about Yen, but when you go to yen.chat, essentially my BBS version of 2021, you are instantly in the product. There's no logging in. You are instantly in the app. And this is a little bit of a mind fuck for a lot of people, but that's what the early internet was. You literally logged in and you were there. You didn't need to register shit.
I'm going to touch on that just a little bit. You had mentioned a couple of gatekeepers that still exist today. Now, the idea of Yen is to connect people and help global collaborations between people, which means creating your own platform to do away with things like Discord and Slack, two potential gatekeepers. However, I'm going to press you a little bit. You're still using YouTube. Do you think, or do you see that as still being an important bottleneck or gatekeeper or platform for people to be using?
Yes. This is great. Great, Zach. I love your questions. This is important for folks because a meta creator is one who has allegiances not to centralization or decentralization. A true meta creator is one whose allegiance lies with himself. It's self-sovereignty. It's about, hey, this is about me and my art and the gifts that I can give to the rest of the world. And so the meta creator is not one of dogma. It's not dogmatic about tool decisions and choices, because in the end of the day, did you create the brush and the paint that you made for your art? No, someone else did, right? So you can go all the way back to even a pencil and paper. Did you create the pencil and the paper that you're using for your sketch today? No, you didn't. Someone, in China did. So the point is, every artist, both analog and digital, are meta creators. They're using centralized services and decentralized services to create their art. This is the metaverse. This is one of the greatest inconsistencies or greatest misgivings or misconceptions about what the future of the internet is. It is not decentralized only. It's not centralized only. It's both. It's a combination of decentralized and centralized service. So to answer your question, is it possible for a meta creator to live the meta creator lifestyle and use decentralized service, open source products that are freely and openly and publicly available? Yes. Can they also use centralized services like YouTube to create their art and share their art with the world? Absolutely. There are no rules about that. But even so, right now, I'm using YouTube and I love YouTube. YouTube's a great community. It's a great platform. Hey, it didn't cost me anything. Sure, I give it a little bit of my rights and a lot of my privacy. Yes, that doesn't make me feel super good, but I'm willing to pay that cost to continue to create my art and to share it, and let's be honest, to profit from it. So as long as it's a fairly consistent profit center, I will continue to use it, but eventually I will reduce my dependency on it for sure. Great question.
You were just touching on digital locations online, let's say. Now, how do you feel about physical locations? Do you think there are still advantages to work in places like Silicon Valley, for instance? Is there an advantage that comes from working in a physical bubble like that? And do you think that those bubbles will continue to exist, say, 10 years from now, with you know, the metaverse or whatever trying to take away some of those people out of...
Yeah. Great question. Again, actually, this is a nice dovetail. Perfect. And the answer is actually the same. Both. Because the meta creator is one who's going to leverage all that they have available to them to create their art, to profit from it, and to connect with more folks who love what they do. Which means that they're going to use centralized and decentralized services, which also means that you're probably going to use digital services and in-person services. So I believe the hybrid model has always been the way. So think about the wheel, right? The wheel is both a centralized and decentralized service, right? If you're going to go to walk to the nearest farmer or the market, it is vastly better to use a bicycle, right? Than to walk by yourself. Now you can say, well, I didn't make the bicycle, so fuck the bicycle. Well, you'd be an idiot, right?
Yeah.
Because it's clearly better to use the, centralized offering of the bicycle than walk 100 miles by yourself. So we've been doing this and we've been working in this heterogeneous environment since the dawn of time. The fact that we're trying to fight and become dogmatic again about one particular implementation is folly, foolish, and honestly, a little bit ignorant. There's some natural resources geographically that a smart meta creator should take advantage of. If you're in finance, there's 100+ years of incredible institutional financial knowledge in Wall Street. If you're in the finance world, in banking, derivatives, securities, it probably makes sense to at least visit and have some incredible relationships there. And finally, the exact same thing with technology. The Silicon Valley, the geographic area in Silicon Valley, has some tried and true fundamental values that it's worth being here and tasting, at least getting an appetizer taste. The question as a meta creator is, what industry are you in? What are some of the natural resources that you should be able to take advantage of if you're smart about it and if you have the freedom and flexibility? And the reality now is that you don't have to live there permanently.
A couple of minutes ago, we were talking about 25. I feel like this is an appropriate time to bring up the fact that you were already an exec at 25. You have 2 master's degrees. At one time, you were a marriage counselor, and you've won a bunch of awards for developing apps over the years. Do you look at Yen as the final boss to all of this? Or in other words, do you feel like your career has been leading you here? Or is this something that along those jobs you decided this is what you wanted, like this is what you need to be doing?
Oh, Zach, it's another great question. Kind of all of it together. I think as you start building your career, you have in my 20s, I had some really nice theories about what my career was supposed to be, what it should be, what it ought to be, and there's a lot of insecurity. And you can pay me $1 billion to go back into my 20s, like legitimately. It's because, and as I've shared with you and the folks on this podcast, I've been doing my art for years. I have been a writer ever since I've been in elementary school. And it took me almost 20 years for me to own that. And so the biggest thing for me, or one of the biggest kind of life missions for me as an artist, is to help others live and appreciate and love their own art earlier in their lives and not wait till they're almost 40. And so what you see actually in my resume is essentially a sampling of experimentation. I've tried everything from being a Boar's Head Meat Deli line guy to bagging groceries at Publix, to serving liquor, right, to bussing tables, to I worked at Pack Mail, so I was packing mail for folks. I worked at FedEx Kinko's. I was making copies for people at $5.15 an hour. I've worked obviously at big technology companies. I've worked at big ones. I've worked at small shops. I built consulting firm. I worked as an assistant pastor at a church where I was preaching 4 times a week, twice on Friday, twice or maybe 3 times on a Sunday. My career path, my career history, my career track record or whatever, it looks a little bit like a clusterfuck. It looks a little bit like a dumpster fire. No question about it. But what you see is me not giving up on the intent and purpose of experimenting with life in an effort to find out precisely what I'm supposed to do. And God damn it, I found it.
Do you think that with the decentralization of working in offices or having to do so in the future will help, let's say, mitigate or remove some of the stigma or a negative connotation that can come with, he's just running a company in his room?
Yes, because when I was growing up, if I were to look at your screen, Zach, seeing you in this small, kind of dimly lit, purple, pink colored room with a blue beanbag in the background, I'd be like, that guy is so unpro. Like, that guy is an amateur. Again, 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I'd be like, there's no fucking way I'd work with Zach. Fuck that guy. Today, that has dramatically transformed because we see famous multi-million-dollar YouTubers, Twitch live streamers have the exact same setup, and we do not think about unprofessionalism. We don't think about things like that. We think about, oh my God, I want to be you.
John, you're no stranger to Bitcoin. Do you mind if I ask if that's something you're still heavily invested in? I know Bitcoin has taken a bit of a dive recently.
It's a big deal. In fact, Zach, I hope you include this on the episode because it's a really big deal. Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and DeFi was the foundation of Yen, my venture-backed project. We started in the DeFi space. Bitcoin was the inspiration for it. We've pivoted a handful of times to find a working business, which is always important. You got to make more money than you spend. I created a specific public room in yen.chat where we can talk about Bitcoin all the time. And Bitcoin has changed my life. I'll just say this very plainly. Bitcoin has transformed my fucking life in every imaginable way. I was in debt, over $100,000 in debt. I have no problem sharing that. I've been very public about that on the blog. Bitcoin has not only allowed me to get rid of every single debt that I have, but has allowed me to radically transform my life where I have real estate in 2 of the most expensive places on the world. And so I'm unashamed about saying very clearly that Bitcoin is an amazing and important technology. The way that I think about life has dramatically transformed because what Bitcoin does, it doesn't only transform the way that you do your finances, it transforms the way that you think about the way you do finances. Because what's so unique about a Bitcoin is you can divide it by 100 millionth spots. Unlike cash, the dollar is divisible by 100 cents. You can do 8 decimal points, 8 spots up to 100th of a Satoshi, and that might be worth $1 million. I mean, just it's crazy to think. The greatest gift of decentralization wasn't DeFi, decentralized finance, it wasn't blockchain. Because decentralization existed as an idea, as a modality, and as a technology way before like cryptocurrency, Jesus. No, what cryptocurrency did was it elevated decentralization as a topic of conversation to the cultural level, to the mainstream level. It enabled folks to talk about something that they didn't know existed, but that existed. It's kind of like if someone suddenly said, hey, guess what, guys? There's this thing called gravity. Cryptocurrency has done to the world is it's unmasked a reality. The folks that are profiting are the ones who see it and say, holy shit, you're right. Gravity does exist. I should fucking do something about that.
So nuts.
Right? Like, yeah, it's nuts. It's nuts. And so Thanks for asking the question.
Thanks for the answers. These have been so detailed. I've had a fantastic time. I think you're an incredibly interesting person, John. I can tell you're passionate about a lot of things, and I love talking to passionate people.
That's why I said yes to this. Thank you, Zach.
Thank you, John. This has been incredible, and I think this is probably the best spot for us to wrap up. I think everybody who's checking this out absolutely needs to check out John. We'll have links in the description. You got to check out Yen.
And tons of B-roll.
Tons of B-roll. John Saddington. John Meta Creator.
Yes.
Woo! Thank you so much for checking this out. John, again, thank you so much for being here. Super quick, you can give me a yes or no. I know that you used to play Mists of Pandaria. Have you checked out any classic at all? TBC came out recently.
Oh my God, I haven't had the opportunity, but how many times have I wanted to roll or re-roll every vanilla class? Hell to the yeah, just to do just to run to the Barons, right? And just to see, and the coolest thing, and I don't know, this is totally side, but one of the coolest things in World of Warcraft, any massively multi-RPG, was drive-by buffing.
Yes! Fortify.
When someone would just, and they would just go, whoop, more life, more intelligence, more HP, you're right, you need a buff, and they would just keep riding, and you're like, God damn, thank you. If we can create a world where people can drive by buff other folks.
Thank you so much. This has been fantastic.
I love this chat. Thank you so much. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.